Hello, this is Todd Luck, and I recently did reviews of Tarzan and Jane from Boss Fight Studios. These are 3 3/4 inch figures that are brand new that just came out of these characters. And in the comments for those videos, I got a request to do a comparison between these 3 3/4 inch figures and the 4 inch figures that came out of Tarzan in the Tarzan the Epic Adventures line by Trendmasters from the 90s, which I've done quite a few reviews of, so I thought that comparison would be a fun video. Now in my review, I did compare the Tarzan figure to the 5.5 inch Tarzan from the Tarzan the Epic Adventure line that you're seeing right there, because they are pretty much equivalent figures. They came with the same accessories and all that. Jane, unfortunately, did not have an equivalent in the line. They did plan for a Jane figure and just never came out with it, but I showed what that figure would have looked like and sounded like in my review of her if you want to check out those videos. Now, I didn't pull out the 4 inch figures for those reviews because there is no equivalent figure for either of these characters in there, because all the Tarzan figures on the 4 inch scale had him in like different armors or outfits. They never did just a plain Tarzan for the 4 inch scale. And there was one other reason I didn't pull out the 4 inch figures, and that's because they're on a different scale. And so even though they're 4 inches tall and approximately the same height as the Boss Fight Studios Tarzan, they are definitely made on a bigger scale. And so the Tarzan the Epic Adventures 4 inch figures would come in 2 packs. In this case, it would be Tarzan fighting a villain, and they would come with accessories, and they were kind of figurines. They couldn't move anything other than their arms and their heads, but they still look pretty cool. And so you're seeing 3 out of 4 of the Tarzans that were made into 4 inch figures. I don't have Dino Armored Tarzan, but this does give you an idea of what they look like here. And just for fun, here are Tarzan and Jane with the John Carter and DJ Torres from the 4 inch line from Tarzan the Epic Adventures, along with the Martian villains. And I gotta say, even if their scale is a little bit off, Jane and DJ Torres together is absolutely epic. And I really do hope Boss Fight Studios is able to eventually get the rights to do the Barsoom figures, because back in the 90s when Trendmasters was putting out all these John Carter figures as part of the Tarzan line, very few people would have known who John Carter or Mars was at the time. But now with the movie and the comics, I think a lot of people have awareness of who John Carter is, what Barsoom is, and would love to get some figures. So there are a few instances where you could maybe make a scene between both lines. So the Martian creatures are supposed to be typically larger than humans. And so the plant man here is from the Tarzan the Epic Adventures line. It is a bendable figure. Its arms and tail bend, which is pretty awesome. It's still not quite as tall as it should be compared to Tarzan and Jane, but it is nice to actually be able to have a plant man that's taller than your Burroughs hero. And then there's a 5.5 inch Tars Tarkas figure, and how absolutely perfect does this look, kids? So here, Tars Tarkas is playing the role of an evil Thark kidnapping Jane, and I think the scale really, really works. Tharks are supposed to be about 15 foot tall, so maybe technically he should be taller, but it just works really well. Again, I still hope Boss Fight Studios gets the rights to do Mars figures, because I think there would be definitely an audience that would love to have a fully articulated Tars Tarkas. Obviously, it would cost more than the standard figures, but we're used to that at this point, and I think there'd definitely be an audience. And so here Tarzan is with the 4 inch Leopard Man from Tarzan the Epic Adventures, and I gotta say, I think these two are passable together. Leopard Man was one of the smaller figures in the 4 inch line, and here he just looks like he's just happens to be a very large person compared to Tarzan. And I think it works. He's just, kind of this big, beefy dude. And that being said, I still would love to have a fully articulated 3 3/4 inch Leopard Man. Boss Fight Studios, I think this is an absolutely vital figure for you guys to do in this line. I also think the 4-inch Mayhar may also be passable. This is what they modeled the Mayhar on the Tarzan the Epic Adventures TV show after, but this is really a new design that doesn't have anything to do with the novels. So it's really up to your imagination how big Mayhar should be compared to Tarzan as far as this new version of it goes. And so the question is, what was the scale for those 4-inch Tarzan figures from Trendmasters? And that's a really good question. In previous videos, I thought they were probably the closest to 4.5-inch figures, which was the scale that superhero figures were on in the 80s. To your left, you see Secret Wars, which measured just below 4.5 inches typically because they had that kind of squat action pose. And to your right, you see Superpowers, which were your DC heroes, and they stood up straight. So they were a little bit above 4.5 inches tall typically. And as you can see to your far right, the DC figures kept that scale into the 90s with Robin and Steel there. However, I think I was actually wrong on this because I believe if this 4-inch Tarzan figure stood up, he would just tower over all of the others. And so I don't think that was the scale they had in mind. And so looking through my box of old toys, I actually think they had a different competitor in mind as far as the size for the 4-inch figures. So if Tarzan stood up, I think he might be somewhere around the height of Thanos there. And Thanos comes from the Toy Biz line of Marvel figures. He is actually part of the Fantastic Four line that began in 1994. Tarzan the Epic Adventures actually came out in 95, so this would have been a competing line of superhero toys, and I think he's probably more in scale with that than he would be the DC figures from the 90s that you're looking at right there. I don't have a lot of context here. I'm just looking at pictures to see that Thanos looks approximately the same size as the other Fantastic Four figures. But if I'm wrong on that, please let me know because I have very limited knowledge of this. You are seeing my entire 90s superhero collection right here. I had aged out of playing with figures and really didn't collect many of them. It had to be like an absolute favorite character for me to pick it up. So my knowledge is limited, but it does seem like if they were thinking of a scale, they were probably looking at the stuff that Toy Biz was doing with Marvel. And while we're at it, what if there was a John Carter figure on that 4.5-inch scale in that same kind of style as Secret Wars? Be kind of crazy, right? And believe it or not, it does exist. Sort of. There is an unlicensed figure of John Carter in the Amazing Heroes line from Fresh Monkey Fiction, and they do public domain heroes in the 4.5-inch Secret Wars style. And so I've got that coming, and so in a future video, we'll be taking a look at their Champion of Mars figure. By the way, if it's modeled after a specific version of John Carter, let me know. It looks pretty close to the old comic strip, but it does look a little bit different than that. And so we'll have that review coming up, and I'll compare it to the existing John Carter figures as well as the Secret Wars figures, and we'll see if he can hold the Secret Shield. And of course, I've got other Tarzan and Burroughs videos coming up and tons of other stuff. So like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, see ya.